It's every basketball prospect's dream to one day be drafted into the NBA. The small, tiny fraction of athletes that are actually able to reach this point is truly a feat in and of itself, regardless of how you actually do once you get to the league. But what's an even bigger feat is getting that second contract. Every rookie drafted in the first round, they're all able to get their bags without having to play a single game of NBA basketball. But can they play well enough to actually get the next contract and stay in the league beyond those first 4 seasons under their rookie deal? You might be surprised to know that only about half of all players make it to their second contract, making it an even smaller pool of dreamers who only wish to get to the NBA but then actually have a long, prosperous career once they're there. Well, this year there were a lot of players from the 2020 draft class who got their second contract, their early contract extensions that will go into effect next season. And then there were those who did not come to terms and are set to be restricted free agents next summer. And in this video, we're going to be grading all of the rookie contract extensions that happened this offseason, now that the deadline for those extensions have passed. And while I'm going through these, I would love to hear your grades for each player as well. As always, if you're new to the channel and you like this type of content, it would mean a great deal to me if you subscribe to help the channel grow. And in return, I'll be providing more NBA content like this. Now, I'm going to go in order for when these players were drafted. Most would consider the 2020 draft class to be a little underwhelming, especially when you consider some of the draft classes that have come after it. But at the top, and for those who receive these big max extensions, you have some incredible future superstar talent in the making. And so we'll start with the #1 pick in Anthony Edwards, who in my opinion as of right now is still the best player from this draft and also has the most upside. Halliburton is right there with him, who I'll get to, but I see a higher ceiling from Edwards than I do for Halliburton, as he has just continued to get better with every passing season, improving so many aspects of his game between his shooting efficiency, passing, his defense has gotten considerably better, his handles, that quick first step and slashing ability to get to the rim, everything. Edwards received a 5-year, $260 million max extension, which, as I'm sure most of you know, under the new CBA rules, rookie contract extensions, whether they are a max or not, can now be 5 years, whereas before they were capped at 4 years. It's an insane amount of money, $260 million for a player having only played 3 seasons in the league. But with the new salary cap increases, the fact that they're still young, going to be playing these contracts through their primes, and for a player like Edwards that has so much upside, only being 22 and having not entered his prime yet, and because the Wolves, given they mortgaged a lot of their future in the form of draft picks to get Rudy Gobert, locking up Edwards for a long-term deal is a good call, and I don't see how you cannot give this an A grading. Next, we have LaMelo Ball, who was taken 3rd in the draft. James Wiseman, #2, obviously did not get an extension. It's possible he might be one of those players who doesn't make it beyond his rookie contract, but we'll have to wait and see how this season transpires for him. But for LaMelo Ball, same deal that Edwards got, 5 years, $260 million, another max extension. Well, I get why the Hornets did this, because you're talking about a franchise that doesn't have a history of drafting well. In fact, you could argue they're one of the worst drafting teams in the league with the amount of busted lottery picks they've had over the years. LaMelo is the first draft pick that not only carries with it a lot of attention and viewership because he's a ball brother, but he's also actually a very good basketball player and has shown up well for them thus far, being the first Hornet to be selected as an all-star since Kemba Walker. That said though, if you've been following the channel for some time now, you already know this, but I'm not as high on LaMelo as most people are. I think he's a great player. He's certainly the best player on the Hornets, and I think he's still going to continue to get better. But is LaMelo going to be a superstar level player in this league? Or say even a top 20 or top 15 player in the league at some point during this contract? Because you're definitely paying him like one. You're paying him like he's going to be a superstar, or at least you think he's going to get there if he's not there right now. And I just can't say with confidence that LaMelo Ball is that guy. He's a very streaky shooter, doesn't impact the defensive side of the ball, at least not yet anyway, an incredible passer, some of the best court vision in the NBA, so while I think LaMelo does deserve a big contract extension and the Hornets have to take advantage of that rather than losing him in free agency, I'm giving it a B+ grade just purely because I don't think LaMelo is worth max level money. Next on the list in terms of the draft order, Onyeka Okongwu, who was taken 6th overall by the Hawks. This deal was reached at the very last minute before the deadline. 4 years, $62 million, average annual salary of $15.5 million, and I absolutely love this deal for the Hawks. Getting Okongwu at that rate is one of the biggest bargain deals from this draft class, because while $15.5 million might seem like a lot for a player who still has a lot left to prove and a lot of development ahead of him, keep in mind $15.5 million is going to be the mid-level exception in the next 1 to 2 seasons with the salary cap increasing. By the end of this deal, Okongwu is going to be making less than the mid-level exception for a player that is going to be just entering his prime. Now, do I think Okongwu is going to be an all-star in this league? No, but he certainly will be and is a starting caliber level center, one that can finish in the paint, protect the rim, and crash the boards. Getting that for a young player on a very team-friendly deal is ideal for the Hawks, especially for a team that also mortgaged a lot of their future to get DeJounte Murray. I have to give this one an A grade just purely for the amount of the contract and still the upside for Okongwu, who has gotten better with every passing season since entering the league. The next guy to receive an extension, Deni Avdija, who was taken 9th by the Wizards, another very cheap deal, 4 years, $55 million. I don't like this one as much as Okongwu, even though it's a lower amount, partially because I don't see as much upside from Avdija. But when you're getting Avdija, a young 22-year-old who has entered his prime, has not entered his prime, I should say yet, fairly versatile forward, has improved on the defensive end, can shoot it from outside, it's a good deal getting him locked in for that kind of long-term contract. I'm giving it an A- because, one, I still don't really know how he fits in the overall direction and future of the Wizards, but also a little bit lower because I don't really view Avdija getting that much better than what we've currently seen from him. And so a mid-level exception type of deal for his production makes sense. Next, the San Antonio Spurs agreed to a 5-year, $146 million extension for Devin Vassell, who they took 11th in that draft. It's a pretty hefty contract, but honestly, when you see how much he's progressed as a player since entering the league after having a pretty underwhelming rookie season to now being a versatile scorer, improved playmaker, you've seen some progress on the defensive side of the ball as well. Still needs to be a more efficient player overall on offense, but I think that'll get there with time. He is only 23, and so yes, it's a lot of money. It's a 5-year deal, a lot of guaranteed money coming his way, but I think when you see what he's been able to do as a player, progressing every season, the upside potential and his ceiling, and the fact that he fits the Spurs timeline and the direction they're going in to build for the future and building around Wemby, I like this deal for both the Spurs and Vassell. I'm going to give it an A-. Next, a player who you knew was going to be getting a max rookie extension, and I don't think anyone will have any qualms about it. Tyrese Haliburton was taken 12th by the Kings, but then traded to the Pacers in that Sabonis deal. Haliburton is that dude. He is so incredibly talented, so crafty, can score at all 3 levels, but not only that, he makes his teammates better with his high-level playmaking. He's quickly become one of the best passing guards in the game. 5 years, $260 million, same deal as Anthony Edwards and LaMelo. If you're the Pacers and seeing the potential superstar you have on your hands, being in a small market, knowing you don't get these types of players very often, yeah, you lock him up for as long as you can, no matter the cost. And for that reason, I'm giving it an A. I'm going to go through some of the rest of these a little more quickly, but how about Aaron Nesmith, who was taken 14th overall? The Pacers reach an extension with him as well, 3 years, $33 million. Initially, I was surprised the Pacers reached an extension with him. I thought for sure Nesmith was going to bet on himself and look for a longer term, more lucrative contract and a prove-it year on the final year of his contract, because he clearly is a skilled player and improved greatly last season. And for the Pacers, getting Nesmith at an average salary of $11 million per year, less than the full mid-level exception, that's another bargain deal. And so far in the early going of this season, Nesmith is looking like he's going to outplay that contract as he's gotten even more efficient, especially shooting it from deep. He's improved his rebounding as well. Again, I feel like I'm giving high grades to all these guys, but because I really like these contracts, and this one is on the same lines of Okongwu's deal in terms of value, but probably even more favorable for the team, and so I'm giving this one an A as well. Moving right along with the 15th pick, the Magic drafted Cole Anthony at 15, and the thing about Anthony is that a lot of people assume the Magic were going to be trading this guy because the Magic have a crowded backcourt. They've continued to draft guards since then, and while Anthony has been good and really exceeded expectations relative to where he was drafted anyway, he has been a little inconsistent at times. He's started coming off the bench, hasn't been the most efficient scorer, is a net negative on the defensive end. I was surprised they reached a deal because I thought the Magic would look to potentially trade him this year before he became a restricted free agent. But then when I saw the amount, and then you also see how well Anthony has played so far this season, at 3 years, $39 million, just a tad above what Nesmith got, yeah, I have to give this one an A as well. The next player from the 2020 draft that received an extension was Josh Green of the Dallas Mavericks. Another bargain deal, 3 years, $41 million. Green still has a lot of aspects to his game that he needs to work on, and he hasn't proven that much to date since entering the league, but based on how he showed up last season, was a solid contributor on the offensive end for the Mavs coming off the bench for a good portion of the season. I think it's a pretty fair deal when you're getting him around the mid-level exception, and it's also a shorter-term deal should you not see much progress for Green or even start to see a regression. So I'm giving this one a B+, mainly because I'm comparing it to the last 2 deals for Nesmith and Anthony, who I think are better players and receive cheaper contracts. Next, which I think was the most surprising extension of them all, a player I thought for sure would enter restricted free agency next summer just because he hasn't really proven much and because he's on a title team and he hasn't really been getting a ton of minutes, but the Nuggets reaching an extension for Zeke Nnaji, 4 years, $32 million. It's a very cheap deal at just $8 million a year, but it seemed a little early to me for the Nuggets to do this when you would probably want to see how the season goes and if it's worth offering him that kind of extension. Still a lot of question marks about his ceiling and how far he can really get in this league. I'm giving this one a lower grade of C+. The only reason I don't have it a little bit lower is because it's such a cheap rate that it's almost inconsequential for a team like the Nuggets who is only focused on winning now, coming off a title run. The next player to get an extension was Peyton Pritchard of the Boston Celtics, 26th overall in 2020, 4 years, $30 million. Another extension I was a little surprised to see, thought the Celtics would look to either trade or wait and see how he does this season before giving him an extension. But like Nnaji, it's at such a low rate, even less in fact, that you almost kind of have to hand it to the Celtics to get one of their younger rotational players at a low dollar amount. That said though, part of it does make you wonder, does Pritchard have a long-term future in the NBA? Was it even worth giving him an extension at all, especially given Pritchard is an older player from that draft, already being 25? I'm giving it a B- because it's at such a low dollar value, but it also could have been value better spent elsewhere. And then the last two extensions from the 2020 class are really the big ones. We'll start with Jaden McDaniels, 5 years, $136 million, similar level deal to that of Vassell. Normally, I would say this is an overpay. And it probably is an overpay to an extent, but an average salary of $27.7 million, knowing that by the end of this deal, when McDaniels is in his prime, salary cap has increased substantially, this is probably going to look like a good deal. And you also have to remember that 3 and D level players are paid at a premium in this league. McDaniels is a high-level defender, one of the few people in the league that can literally guard every position, and he's starting to improve his overall offense and becoming a threat shooting it from outside. Guys like that are highly coveted in today's NBA, and they're going to get paid as such. Yeah, it's a bit much for a player who only averages 12 points per game, and I don't especially like the deal for the Wolves because they're now going into the luxury tax with all the other salary they have committed, and a luxury tax team that is effectively a middle-of-the-road team. But overall, I do like McDaniels as a player, and I think he has a great future in the league. I'm giving it a B, though, because of the high value of the deal. And then finally, the last first-round pick in rookie extension, but actually happened to be one of the first extension deals in the offseason, Desmond Bane, 5 years, $207 million. Desmond Bane got a $200 million deal. Don't get me wrong, Bane is a great player, one of the better shooters in the league, shot over 40% on 7 threes per game last season. That kind of efficiency is paid well in the NBA. Rebounds well for a guard, decent playmaker, and if I'm the Grizzlies, I absolutely look to lock onto a player like Bane, but come on now, $207 million. You're going to pay Bane over $40 million per year. You're putting him on the same wavelength as guys like Anthony Davis, Trae Young, Damian Lillard, Jimmy Butler, and it's not like Bane is 22 or 23 like a lot of the guys from this class. No, he's 25, which I'm not saying that's old. He's just entering his prime, but it also means that his ceiling is probably not as high as some of these younger players. And so you're committing to Bane for 5 years until he's 31 because the contract doesn't go into effect until next season. At that rate, just seems like a very steep price. I think something in the $140 to $150 million range would have been reasonable, but $200 million? Nah, that's an overpay if I ever saw one. And I've got to give the Grizzlies a C- for this extension. Anyway, those are my grades for all the rookie contract extensions. Let me know where you would have graded players differently. Put those down in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.